Hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name's Bridget. I am a Sustainability Engagement Officer at Lake Macquarie Council, and we are promoting Plastic Free July at the moment. And Plastic Free July is a great time to learn a bit more about plastic and the impact it can have on our lives. But we're lucky enough today to be joined by some incredibly knowledgeable speakers. So thank you in advance to all our speakers for joining us. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge our First Nations people, the Awabakal people, as members of the oldest living continuous culture on Earth, who have looked after our waterways, estuaries, ocean and land for over 65,000 years. And I'm going to share an acknowledgement of country in language now. Just bear with me.
Wandakalyoa, Tumangai ngarakalyo keranan parayaren. Ngarakalomba yulodaka, pipa yelen parayada baroka. Lake Macquarie City Council doman aubakala, ngarakal yalawa, yalawan, yalawanan.
Okay. Just a little bit of housekeeping to start. With the exception of our speakers, I just ask everyone to have their cameras turned off and stay on mute, please. If you have any questions, we would love for you to pop them in the Q&A function at the top. And then at the end of the 4 speakers, we'll go to that and work through them, and you'll have a chance to ask any additional questions then as well. So it is an interactive session, so please put your questions in there. This webinar will be recorded, so just please, know that. And I'd like to acknowledge our speakers. First up today, we have Associate Professor Dr. Sava Palanisamy. He's a postdoctoral scientist at the Environmental Plastics Innovation Cluster, or EPIC, at the University of Newcastle. His research involves tracking these transformation products through the environment and their impact on human health using in vitro and in vivo tools. Recently, his research has focused on the risk assessment and remediation of emerging contaminants such as microplastics and perfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS. His team initiated research on microplastics in 2015, aiming to understand the aging and weathering processes of microplastics in the environment to improve ecological and human health risk assessment. His team is currently working on 12 different research topics to address knowledge gaps, and they have developed remediation technologies in collaboration with industry partners. Welcome, Dr. Sava Palanisamy. Our second speaker today is Dr. Gitika Bangwal Russell. Gitika is a postdoctoral scientist at EPIC, a colleague of Dr. Palanisamy at the University of Newcastle. Her research investigates the short and long-term environmental and human health consequences of exposure to micro nanoplastics and the chemicals they release. She has over 10 years of experience in microbiology, polymer chemistry, and environmental science. Our third speaker today, we will have Simon Warpole, Principal Environmental Strategist at Lake Macquarie City Council, talking about microplastic monitoring in Lake Macquarie. And our fourth speaker is Margot Smith, Sustainability Engagement Officer at Lake Macquarie Council, talking about the Eco Angel program. So thank you to all 4 of you for sharing your time today and sharing your expertise with us. So as you can see, we've got a jam-packed lineup, and we will kick off straight away to try and keep it on time. So I'll hand it over to Dr. Sava Palanisamy. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Can everyone see my screen? Full screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you.
You're not seeing a full screen at the moment. Oh, there we are.
It's okay? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Thank you. Thank you, Bridget, for your kind introduction. So as Bridget introduced, I am an associate professor at the University of Newcastle. I lead a small center called Environmental Plastics and Innovation Cluster, shortly called EPIC. So EPIC is the Center of Excellence for Plastic Research in Australia. It is one of the leading centers in the world, and we focus exclusively on the impacts of plastics and taking all the way to the innovation regulation policies. So before I start, the picture you see in this introduction slide was more than 50 years ago when plastic was invented. And this was in the front headline showing the introducing a throwaway culture. So, no more washing of dishes and you can just simply use it and throw it. So that's kind of enjoyment we had with plastics, single-use plastic specifically. And because of that, we end up this problem. 400 million tons of plastic waste was produced each year, and at least half of them are ending up in the ocean. And it's not only there, it's actually continue to penetrate our food chain as a microplastics. And then it is shown to be detrimental to health. And I'll show you a bit more on the next few slides. And one particular point here, even if we stop the production of primary plastic by today, we'll still be having a lot of plastic waste in our food chain. So that is the scenario. So it is already too late, but we have to act fast. So that's why we have our center that's focusing exclusively on understanding in the impact of plastics under various environmental matrices. So in terms of plastic, there are 3 types of plastics, and the 3 types of plastics are formed on the basis of its behavior in the environment. So once plastics enters in the environment, that is subjected to various types of weathering. So fragmentation, physico-chemical process, and biological. These processes actually act on the plastics, and then it slowly breaks down into smaller and smaller particles. And smaller the particle is bigger the problem. Why? So here is the comparative graphics on the various sizes of plastics, and on your right side is macroplastic, which is for example your plastic bottle, and then anything up to 1 millimeter all the way down to 1 micron is now classified as microplastic. It used to be a larger size, like up to 5 millimeter, and because of more toxicological information, the classification is being upgraded. So now the studies are focusing more on this fine size microplastic because that has the ability to penetrate the food chain. If we see for comparison, the microplastic can be in the range of size of salt or sand particle, or even all the way to smoke. So they solve microplastic, and even the microfibers that is within microplastic classification, that is the width of our human hair. So this is the microplastic, and even more dangerous thing is called nanoplastics. These nanoplastics are less than 1 micron size or 1000 nanometer size. It can go down to 1 nanometer, even more if you are able to detect. So these are all almost like size of our COVID virus or our DNA strand. That shows our the issue here. So the smaller the particle, the toxicity is going to be higher because these small particles can penetrate any organisms and any internal organs. And that's why we are able to see nowadays a lot of exposure of plastics on various animals, including human, and it is found everywhere, every organs, every tissues. So with that background, I'll just give you a brief introduction of what EPIC has been doing in the last almost 10 years and what we have contributed and achieved. And then I will leave it to Dr. Gitika to cover in depth. So we have 3 research themes: risk assessment of plastic and remediation and redesigning. All these 3 themes are covered by 4 research programs. Firstly, we want to understand the environmental risk of microplastic and then its risk on human health, and also what are the possible remediation technologies or treatments available to remove the microplastics from the environment and our food chain. And fourth important pillar is knowing all this fundamental information about the nanoplastics, what we are going to do. We have to either stop it or find a way to reduce it. So that's why we have an important theme called Redesigning for Circular Economy, in which we emphasize on designing novel compostable plastic alternative product, and then quality assurance program for this kind of product, so that we know this product is going to be biodegradable in certain condition, certain time frame. And also product stewardship programs for recycled products, how this recycled product can be safe in the long run. So these 4 research program has driven a lot of changes, and actually most of our project outcomes have shifted the direction for plastic research, which you would have come across some of our research in the policy and media. And we were really proud of our achievement, because until we published in 2018, plastic problem was seen as a marine problem, and it was not seen as a human problem. And also, if we see some of these outcomes that we have contributed in the last 9 years, some of these outcomes were not in the publication until we published. And this information helped for regulators and policymakers to bring out new policies and understand the plastic problem in depth. And environmental risks are very important because this underpins the human risk assessment. In environmental risk, especially for Australia, because the data from other continents and countries may not be directly applicable, because plastic weathering is totally depending on the environmental parameters. It could be, temperature and water quality and other parameters. So the weathering pattern can change depending on where plastic waste is found. And it can, countries like Australia, we have extreme weather events and, large long days and UV, and it's actually more pronounced. And so we have studied this in various scenarios, and how plastics interacts with the environment. And when it interacts, 3 main groups of factors that's actually contributing to the risk of plastics. One is actually chemical risk. So the chemicals in the environment can be attracted to the plastics and then sequestrated in plastic. At the same time, chemicals within the plastics can be migrated out of plastics and then contaminate the nearby water bodies and environment. And also pathogens can specifically bind to the microorganism, which Dr. Gitika will be speaking a bit more. And also the methodologies, 9 years ago, methodologies available was not directly applicable to our environment, our matrices. So we have to optimize and develop our own methodology to suit our own condition. In the second highlight is human health risk assessment. So what we have done, you might have all come across this famous study, people ingesting credit card size of plastics every week. When this study came, it's actually media attention and also influenced a lot of policy changes. So more than 130 countries actually enacted a single-use plastic ban after this study. The study was conducted in collaboration with WWF, and this has attracted enormous attention around the world in understanding the plastics problem. And we also created a community tool called Your Plastic Diet here. So if you enter your demographic detail, and depending on where you live, you may be able to get the hypothetical figure of how much plastic may be entering your diet. And in this, the outcomes are directly applied by the current ongoing UN treaty, INC 3.4. It started with my talk in Geneva Environmental Network, and there are other presenters, other scientific evidences were discussed, and then INC was formed. So our study was directly referred by the international treaty. It's currently being discussed, and this study has attracted more than 3 billion media attention. and has been adopted in various public awareness campaigns. In a nutshell, some of our accomplishments, and we are an established plastic research leader globally, sitting next to Lake Macquarie City Council. And so we were invited by Geneva Environmental Network and also US National Academy of Sciences and Medicine to present the impact of plastics on human health. And we have also been part of a National Plastic Summit, which was nominated by the New South Wales government, and I was leading a panel there. And we also interact with other international bodies focusing on environmental health, so European Research Council, and also specific programs from Victoria EPA, New South Wales EPA on plastics and its association with environmental contaminants. So as I mentioned briefly in my previous slide, our research has influenced a lot of policy changes, and those policy changes contributed to the reduced plastic waste in the environment. So that's on the impacts, understanding the impacts of plastics and the impacts we created on policy changes and some of the knowledge gaps. And we didn't stop there. We also actually moved on to the fourth theme, how to better redesign the new plastic alternative products. So we have partnered with various industry partners within Australia, and we have worked with them to deliver a truly compostable or biodegradable plastic alternative product using waste resources. So it's actually fully sustainable products, and these products are to be made, some of them already being made and to be made in Australia. Here is a snapshot of some of our innovations. So we have developed on seaweed-based product in collaboration with New South Wales industry partner, and we also have pilot scale technology readiness for PHA, polyhydroxyalkylate, which is the only marine biodegradable biopolymers. And we have developed some of the tools. One thing here, which is a highlight, this is a grass cutting trimmer line. This was actually a request from local MP Greg Piper, because he has a hobby of picking this up, this synthetic trimmer lines from Lake Macquarie, and he seemed to be carrying a lot of the waste material from this. So we were collaborating with him, and we developed something to actually totally take away this trimmer line material, because this tiny bit of line is specifically designed to create microplastic, because there is no other way to get rid of this one. You have to cut the grass, and then small tiny particles will be coming out. So we have a technology to develop or manufacture a compostable version of this. And also we have a biodegradable straw, and another one is a card. It can be credit card or access card or ID card, anything, and it is a compostable. Currently it's all PVC and 9 different sandwich of different plastic type. So these are all our innovation, and the innovations just doesn't stop there. We also verify our innovation, and we also verify innovations from other industry partners. How do we verify? So we are the only lab in Australia that is certified to test compostable plastic alternative products. So this compostable plastic alternative product can be tested according to Australian standards, either home or industrial compostable. And before us, there was no lab in Australia, and industries has to rely on overseas lab like Germany, and then wait for a long time and pay significant amount of money to get it done. So we were the first one to get this facility certified, and we are here to support industry partners. So this is in brief of what EPIC has been doing and how we have been supporting, and we have a lot more innovations and impacts, and just giving a brief introduction so that if anyone have interest and questions, you are welcome to come to our lab. And we are also happy to host road shows and catalyze or customize the workshops that can benefit councils and other industry partners. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Slava. You're so accomplished and have contributed so much with your EPIC team to not only sort of Australian research, but also on a global scale. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And for your time today.
Thanks.
Moving right along, our second speaker today, Dr. Katika Bangwal-Russell, is also a postdoctoral scientist at EPIC. So I'll hand it over to you. Thanks, Katika.
Thank you, Margot. I'll just share my presentation. I wonder if you can see it.
Not yet.
No,
Just
not
while
yet.
you're doing that, we had a few people come in during the last presentation. Just a reminder to everyone, we're really encouraging questions tonight. We've got a really knowledgeable lineup of speakers. If you can just pop any questions you've got in the Q&A section, you'll see it along the top bar, and we'll come to those at the end. So thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I'm having internet. Just give me a second. Apologies for that.
That's okay. It happens to everybody. It's technology.
Yeah, it's for some reason it's not liking because the file is 70 MB and it could be that. Do you know if there's like a limit to how much, like how big of a file you're supposed to share?
No, you can share.
Yeah.
You can share, Geetika.
Yeah.
Did you share?
Yeah. It's just showing me like a PPT file thing, but it's not coming out. All right. Bridget, just like a quick fix, would you like if I will just email you the presentation?
Yeah, sure. That sounds good.
That's yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay. We might move on and maybe we'll ask Simon to speak next, and then we can have you as third speaker. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that will work. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Oh, we've got it up. I think it might have taken a while to load.
Yeah, as I said, it's a big file. That's why. Okay. Is it working for everyone? Does it look okay?
It looks great from where I'm sitting. So take it away. Thank you so much.
Lovely. Hello, everyone, and sorry for that whole 2 minutes wasting your time. But I'm Geetika, and I will be specifically talking about one of the 12 different things that our center EPIC is doing. And I'll be focusing on the plastic and the leachate toxicity. Before I continue about talking about leachate, it's important to know what it is. Leachate is anything which is released out of the plastic. So when plastic is created and manufactured, the raw materials are mixed with number of chemicals to give it a particular color, shape, flexibility, durability, UV protection, and all these different properties of plastics that can be added, that are available in the market is because of those chemicals. So these chemicals, they leach out of the plastic, and this could happen during or after the use of plastic, while you're using it or after you have already discarded the plastic. Now, over 16,000 different chemicals have been found to be associated with plastics globally. Doesn't mean that one plastic contains these many chemicals, but the variety is big. 16,000 total chemicals and more. And out of 16,000, a quarter is known to be concerning for human health. And there are 4 major reasons for that. For any chemical to be concerning or hazardous for human health, it needs to be persistent. That is, it should stay in the environment for a very long time. should be able to move in between the environment. For example, if you discard plastic in landfill, it can penetrate through the soil and get to the groundwater. Third is bioaccumulation. Bioaccumulation is the process where when you are exposed to a chemical, it can stay and accumulate in your tissues or in your other parts of your body. And the final is toxicity, which means it directly influences or causes harm to the organisms. So these, a quarter of the overall chemicals that are bad, out of those 4,200, 1,300 chemicals are acceptable throughout the global markets, and the products are produced using those chemicals. And out of 1,300, up to 900 have been certainly linked with certain human diseases or disorders. That means it brings us to about 10,000 chemicals which we are not sure of, like how much toxic they are, how they are released. We are not sure about anything because that is a big number. Slowly, scientists are definitely doing research on such chemicals, but it takes time. Now, these are the main 15 priority chemicals group of concern. These are major groups, but all those 16,000 chemicals belong to one or the other groups. Now, as Thava already mentioned, that plastic contains chemicals, but chemicals from outside, if plastic is discarded in the environment which is contaminated, it has a tendency to also attract those chemicals from the outside, from the water, from the soil, or wherever it is. So now we are talking about a cocktail of chemicals which can be found on the plastics. And this cocktail of chemical is very new to the research area, because before this, plastic is still comparatively, relatively a new material. And since 1960, we've been producing it. So it's not even 100 years that we have worked on plastic. So understanding the nature of how this cocktail will affect the environment, will affect the human, is a very important knowledge gap that we currently have. And many of these chemicals, in terms of human health or environmental health, they are carcinogenic. Some of them are endocrine disrupting chemicals. That means it can disrupt the hormonal balance in humans and animals. And some of them are toxic metals, which are already known to cause many side effects or health effects in humans. And it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that in this day and age, we are eating, drinking, and breathing plastics. And where are those plastics? Usually, when we are talking about plastics, micro and nanoplastics are the major groups of concern because of their size, because they can penetrate the tissue and they can cause inflammation in different body parts when accumulated. But where are these micro and nanoplastics are found? They are found everywhere. If you have a carpet in your house, very likely, unless you're spending a lot of money, it's made of polypropylene or some other type of plastic. Tea bags, many, about 75% of cosmetic products which are currently used in Australia contain nanoplastics and microplastics. All the fake fur is made of plastics. Many paper and coffee mugs are covered in a fine line of plastic. That's why it doesn't get wet when you drink coffee in it. So there are a lot of different areas where man has created these micro nanoplastic for a particular reason. And the other reason is environmental weathering. Because of the environmental weathering, micro nanoplastics can also be formed because they break down over time because of UV and other environmental factors like wave and wind action. And then these micro nanoplastics could leak into the water, into the soil, and other natural environments. And because they are everywhere, they're also found in drinks and other consumables, food items like sugar, salt, seafood, you name it, and it has plastic in it, basically. And the other part of this, we're talking about chemicals and everything, but don't forget, every environment also contains a variety of microorganisms. And there is a big knowledge gap in terms of how these microscopic organisms interact with different type of plastics and the chemicals. Our research showed that the specificity of the microbes differs between the plastic types. That means if there are different type of plastics, they could encourage the growth of different type of microorganisms. And that could mean that over time, this overall group of microorganisms, which is keeping a system, say your water bodies clean, or doing a particular process, fixation of certain elements, that could shift because of the plastic pollution. That would be a long process, slow process, but it looks like it is not something far-fetched. Our other research also found out that these microorganisms, when they cover the plastic, they also increase the tendency of plastic to attract those chemicals that I talked about more. So now our plastic, which has no biofilm, is already a cocktail of contaminants. Now you add biofilm to the mix, and now you have more and more chemicals getting attracted to the plastic, making it more toxic for the environment, for the animals, and for humans. These microbial biofilms also are known to enhance the absorption of PFAS and many heavy metals that we have tested and published previously. Now, overall human exposure or toxicity to microplastics is dependent on how much we are exposed. So far, what we know is we are ingesting about 52,000 particles. We are inhaling much more than that. And based on the dermal contact, especially in terms of cosmetic products, when you are putting it on your skin, we don't know how much exposure that could cause to humans. And the reason why our study that Thava mentioned, like the plastic diet, was important, because unless we know how much we are exposed, there's no way we can find out how much of the chemicals that are associated with plastics are coming into our body, and what is their long-term accumulation, and how they interact with different physicochemical processes, and overall availability to our different systems. That's why that research was really important. This is the research, as you can see on the screen, which was a pivotal step towards human health risk assessment. After, it's not liking those photos apparently. All right. So basically, this slide was all the articles that have been published previously about where microplastics are found, and overall, total 17 different organs were found to contain microplastic, including blood, liver, obviously our gut because we are ingesting plastics, and so on. Okay. I'm just going to skip to this because it's apparently not liking the images I've added. Overall, we already talked about the biofilms, which are connected to the plastics. Now, if we are ingesting plastic, it could also affect the digestive system in the environment, because previously I said that it allows special kind of microorganisms to harbor or to attach on the plastic. And if that is true, if we are exposed to plastic, we are ingesting plastic in such a large amount, our gut also contains a variety of different microorganisms. And another knowledge gap is we don't know how and how much it could influence the overall composition of those microorganisms in our gut. Therefore, it is very important to understand the interaction between three different things. One is our micro nanoplastics, the biofilms or microbiome, and then all the chemicals which are connected with the plastics. Our current research on specifically, I'm only talking about the environmental research because the other topics are very broad. I recently won a grant by the Lake Macquarie City Council, and that was to understand the interaction between the aquatic microorganisms and different type of microplastics and see whether we see any patterns in terms of the chemical toxicity of plastics to the microorganisms. So our research in terms of environmental risk assessment is environmental monitoring of micro nanoplastics, so where they are in different estuarine ecosystem, marine ecosystem, freshwater ecosystem, soil. The second is how the plastic leachate or the release, whatever is released from plastic, could specifically influence an aquatic ecosystem. And it's very important, especially in Australia. The country is surrounded with a large mass of water bodies. We have lakes, estuarine ecosystem, and obviously marine ecosystem. Then leaching of these chemicals in different scenarios. And what it means is the plastic and the chemicals are in the environment. Now they move to, say, seafood. So the environment is completely different. The leaching patterns would be completely different. And then that seafood is ingested by humans. So now we are looking at another change, another transformation of the plastics and chemicals in the human body. So this whole process or these different environmental scenarios are chemically very different. So it's important to understand how the process of release of the chemicals works in different environmental scenarios and their toxicity of the chemicals that are in question. And finally, only talking about environmental microbiome means whatever environment microplastics are present, how the microbiome is changing because of the exposure to different types of plastics and chemicals. And our EPIC team, you can always write to us. You can write to me if you have any questions. There's no silly questions. First of all, we have an entire team of microbiologists, medical researchers, chemists, and environmental scientists to answer any of your questions. So we would be more than happy to answer any of your queries, questions, or if you need help with anything. And with that, thank you so much. Sorry for putting really high, heavy size images. It apparently is not liking it, so I had to skip through a few slides, but thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gitika. That was a wonderful presentation. And yeah, I thank you also for your efforts in quantifying and starting to map the relationships between the plastics and then what happens next as they go through the different cycles. It was, yeah, I learned a lot, so thank you. If anybody has questions, please remember to pop them in the Q&A chat. We'll move along. I'm just conscious of keeping to time. Our next speaker is Simon Warpole. He's the Principal Environmental Strategist at Lake Macquarie City Council. And he's going to be talking about microplastic monitoring in Lake Macquarie. Thanks so much, Simon.
Thanks, Bridget. I hope you can see my screen, and I'm a bit humbled to follow after such groundbreaking environmental research. But I'm Council's Principal Environmental Strategist, and I've been here for many years, and looking after the health of the lake is one of the main jobs that I do. I'm talking today about the microplastic monitoring that we've been doing over the last few years. We actually started this maybe 8 or 10 years ago and worked with Bava and his team. And we've been doing some more work recently, which I was going to give you an update on. At first, when we've been looking for microplastics around the lake, we have been looking around the foreshore areas. This is an example of some of the bigger stuff that we find on the foreshores, which you would all see whenever you walk around the lake. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the small stuff. And at the moment, we're sort of using a definition of microplastics as being anything less than 5 millimeters. So a couple of years ago, we did some research looking at and monitoring, looking at our foreshores. We actually picked out 4 sites: Warners Bay, Spears Point, Marmong and Fennell Bay, and did some transects and collected the microplastics in what was actually in the foreshore areas. This is plastic that's built up over time, and we're seeing some pretty high numbers. So what we saw here was in Warners Bay, we're getting upwards of 700 pieces of microplastics per square metre. You know, that was the highest, but similarly high numbers in Marmong Point, less in Fennell Bay, and Spears Point was pretty high as well. There is a grading for microplastics, and we're sitting, in that high range there for a number of those sites. So this was done by, sieving and collecting the microplastics, and we're looking at plastics from 5 millimeters down to 1 millimeter. So just an example of what we saw in the plastics we collected. This is a type of plastics that we saw over those 4 different sites. Some of them are fairly similar in terms of hard foams, films. Warners Bay at that time had a lot of foams collected, which is more than the other sites. We also saw a variety of colours, although the predominant colour we saw in plastics was white, followed by blue, and then green. And also a range of different sizes as well in the plastics that we collected. And we, as I mentioned, we didn't get a lot of the really small stuff in this sampling. But that tells us, we've definitely got microplastics accumulating in our foreshores. So what we've done next, and this is the focus over the last couple of years, is looking at what level of microplastics do we have in the lake. And this work is being done by the Department of Climate Change, Energy, Environment and Water that we work with quite closely. They have an estuary science team, and that team currently do our monthly water quality monitoring for the lake that generates our lake health report cards. So they come up every month to sampling all across the lake for looking at nutrients, the health of seagrass, sediments, heavy metals and other things in our lake, and that's how we track the health of the lake. And we're looking to incorporate microplastics as part of that regular lake monitoring. So we did a baseline survey, which is essentially looking at how much microplastics are in the water column, and that was a partnership with the State Department. So to do that, what we've done is focused on a couple of different areas. Firstly, the northern basin of the lake, the sort of southern basin area. We looked at our 2 main creek tributaries, being Cockle and Dora Creeks, as well as we did a site down in Crangan Bay, which is probably the more pristine part of the lake. Its catchment is much more forested, less development. So it was a bit of a, I guess, a control side. And we also had a look in Swansea Channel as well on a high tide to see what was coming in from the ocean. And what that's involved is actually using a net, towing it for a particular type of time period so we can calibrate how much water we're actually filtering, going through some chemical preparation processes, and actually looking at what we see under the microscope with those microplastics. At the moment, we've got data that sort of tells us, how much microplastics is there. And there's also other methods that can actually tell us the shape, and also you can do some more chemical analysis using some infrared spectrometry that actually tells you the type of plastics, so whether it's polyethylene or polypropylene or those different types. That's to come. So at the moment, we've got some preliminary results that we wanted to share. And this is the type of material that we've been filtering and collecting through those net surveys. It's a 300 micron net, so we're not getting the really small stuff. So anything between about 0.3 of a millimetre, which is 300 micron, and about 5 millimetres is what you'll be seeing in these results. So these are some of the samples from Cockle Creek, and we can see in February we had a range of different things. In May we saw a lot more of this filament, which they believe to be artificial grass. So someone was obviously laying some artificial turf in the catchment on that time, and that's flowing down and seeing that in our samples. In terms of the results, the preliminary results we've got, and this is tracking what we saw over that 1 year period between October 22 and September 23. We've seen, generally most of the microplastic concentrations in the water are less than 1 piece of microplastic per cubic metre of lake water. We're seeing higher numbers than that in Cockle Creek, and also we're seeing Dora Creek has some higher numbers as well, but Cockle Creek's probably not that surprising. It's our main urbanised catchment. Picks up water from all the way around from Charlestown, all through Cardiff, Glendale, all those industrial areas around to Edgeworth, Cameron Park, so all of those residential areas. So a lot of the population centres are in the Cockle Creek catchment, so not surprising that we're seeing higher concentrations of microplastics in those areas, and that's just confirming that the microplastics are coming off our catchment. So the way we need to manage them is by managing what goes on in the plastics. So by way, we can see that that's also confirmed by our Crangenbite Bay site, which is a very natural catchment. We're seeing very low numbers in there. So these aren't microplastics that are largely flowing into the lake from the ocean water, but it's actually coming off the land and the houses and the streets where we will live. So at the moment, when we average those numbers out, they do go up and down between the months. We're seeing an average in Cockle Creek is about 1 piece of microplastics per cubic metre. Much lower numbers in the lake itself in Dora Creek and Clangan Bay. Part of the work and the reason we're working with the State Government Department of Environment and Climate Change is they're currently developing a methodology to include microplastics monitoring in estuary health monitoring across New South Wales, and they're using Lake Macquarie as a bit of a pilot to do that. What they're seeing in other estuaries at the moment is an average amount of around 2 pieces of microplastics per cubic metre. So it's quite, I guess, good news that Lake Macquarie is looking a lot cleaner in terms of microplastic flow than other estuaries. They're also developing a microplastics pollution grade, which will be able to a standardised method, so we can actually compare microplastics across the state. And Lake Macquarie's been contributing to that methodology, and that should be available in December this year. So that will also be used to generate, and it's monitoring some microplastics heat maps. This is one that's being prepared for the Parramatta and Lane Cove rivers. So we can actually start to get a better idea of where is this material coming from, and that'll give us a better idea on how we can manage it. But also part of the delay in some of this project has been the actual counting of the microplastics. At the moment, to start out with, they're actually having a lab technician counting small pieces of plastic under a microscope. They've since developed a sort of automated computer process where they actually use the computer to count those plastics. And at the moment, where that methodology is looking pretty good. So this column here is what was counted by the computer, and we're also doing human counts as well because we're still in this calibration stage. But we've got that to a point now where it's pretty accurate, so we'll be able to have a much speedier process and save a lot of lab time rather than people spending their life counting little pieces of plastics under a microscope using the computer power to do that. So as I said, these are preliminary results, and we'll have more towards the next year or so, but also got funding from the state government to continue monthly sampling and monitoring of microplastics in the lake for the next 3 years. So that's good news, and we can start to get a much better feel on how microplastics are going. So that's my presentation done, and if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat. Back to you, Bridget.
Thank you so much, Simon, for the update on microplastics in our local environment. Much appreciated. Our last speaker for tonight is Margot Smith. She's a Sustainability Engagement Officer at Lake Macquarie Council, and she's going to be talking to us about the Eco Angel program. Thanks, Margot.
Is it working?
Yep.
Cool. Thanks very much, everybody. I guess I'm taking a slightly different slant today. I'll be talking about our Eco Angel program, which is a community program that we've had running for a number of years. How does this, I guess, fit within Council's general works? It aligns with our community values, our unique landscape, so a place where we're protecting and enhancing our natural environment, and also our connected communities, so supporting and caring for the people that live across the city and also providing that sense of belonging. So this program commenced in middle of 2013, and it was after many requests from residents and community groups to carry out cleanup activities throughout the year and also at no cost for them. So within our community strategic plan, it aligns with providing opportunities for the community to work actively on environmental sustainability activities. And the Eco Angel program helps to protect our natural environment and also to protect the visual amenity. So we've got a number of stakeholders involved in the program, obviously council itself. So these activities can take place on council land or land that's under council care and control. And within council, we've set up a program framework to make sure that the volunteers remain safe. We can provide advice for people as to for potential locations, promotion and networking, providing equipment, organising the waste disposal, and we've got a budget because we still have to pay for all the rubbish that goes across the weighbridge and for a contractor to come and collect that, maintaining the data, and also doing the data entry into the Tangaroa Blues marine data database. And we can also now provide public liability insurance for groups that do not have that formal a framework within them. We've also got our community and business stakeholders. So we've had many sustainable neighbourhood groups. We have scout groups that carry out their activities, Chug, Oki, Ozfish, school groups, sports groups, TAFE. We also have businesses that get involved as part of their team building sessions. So we've had Cat Mining, Ingham's, Newcastle Permanent, even council staff that are doing it as part of their team building. And those community groups, especially if they haven't got their own public liability insurance, the groups also can help with their own event coordination and promotion. They're great networks for us for having local engagement, and they're the ones that are out there collecting the data. And the state government's also a stakeholder as well too. So they're, through the Environmental Protection Agency, providing us with an exemption from the waste and environment levy payments that people generally pay for at the at Awabba as well too. So, how does this also fit within our programs? It's improving our urban habitat. It's helped building partnerships and connection with the environment. And it's also a citizen science project as well too. So a couple of different examples. Back in 2015, we had a great collaboration between Council, the Marine Rescue Lake Macquarie, Chug, local residents and the local MP to go out to the islands just off Nauru there, Elizabeth, Pelican and Spectacle Island, where we have little terns nesting as well these days. So it's an important nesting site there. And at that time, the 23 participants picked up 55 bags of rubbish, 420 kilos of that was general waste, and 80 kilos was metal. And a lot of that metal was canopies that people had taken out there for camping and had never, and had just left them out there as well too. The team NIB team were down at Warners Bay foreshore about 18 months ago. It was a local NIB team, but the coordinators for that were from Sydney, so they didn't know the area. So we were able to support them through the location and also helping them with their data collection as well too. And I always encourage people, if they do find things that are a little bit different, to keep them and use that as part of the promotion post-event. So for that one, it was G.I. Joe, little plastic truck, and also Polly Pocket that I haven't seen for years and years. Had another great group called Enjoy Don't Destroy Australia, and they went down to Myuna Bay, and 9 people over 2 hours collected 100 kilograms of rubbish. More recently, it's been a great collaboration between the Lake Macquarie Sustainable Neighbourhood groups and also the Hunter Native Wildlife Trust. They wanted to build awareness of the issues facing turtles, and they organised the event for close to World Turtle Day. And part of the awareness of that event is inspiring humans to take action to protect turtles and tortoises and increase their survival rates in the wild. So 26 people across 5 locations, 120 kilos of rubbish was collected, and that was all within 2 hours. So it was a fantastic job that they did. So overall, over the 10 years the program's been run, we've had over 2,500 participants. That's at a 2-hour event. Over almost 6,000 hours. It's been 121 sites, and all in all they've collected 29.8 tonnes, and this is on top of the Clean Up Australia Day events that happen through many sites across the year. This is quite a unique program, the Eco Angel program, and no other council has a setup like it. It's really important when the groups are actually doing the Eco Angel events to actually document what they've found, and that does take time, sorting through the litter, counting it and documenting it, but it's really valuable information, and huge thanks to all the volunteers that get involved in that. Providing feedback to all the participants is important, and as I said, with the little Polly Pocket and the G.I. Joe, we've even found phones when we've been out there doing cleanups as well too. So this was just some feedback to a council team that had got involved. For literally in 1 hour, they picked up over 1,000 pieces of plastic film, 968 pieces of hard plastic, lots of plastic packaging, lids, and as Simon had pointed out before, 76 pieces of foam. And just remembering that all those pieces, now that they've been collected, can no longer break up into those smaller and smaller pieces, so those micro and nano plastic particles as well too. Of all those 121 activities that have taken place, we've had 47 groups that have actually provided us with information on what they've collected, and out of those 47 sites, that's 35,000 individual items that have been collected. And the hard plastic remnants are the main thing that are being found, second only to things like straws, confection sticks, cups, plates and cutlery. And hopefully, I think if I looked more closely at the information, that particular cohort will have cut down in the last couple of years as well too, as there's been changes with legislation. So just quickly looking at the information, so that's Spears Point Park that there's staff involved in. They collected 60 kilos of rubbish in that hour, and that was 3,393 items all up. The activity that took place at Warners Bay with the NIB staff in that hour and a half that they were there only seemed like a small amount, only 19 kilos, but that was 1,300 items of that they actually picked up as well too. And the Myuna Bay, which was the group that was walking along the foreshore there, 444 items. So it's really important that the total items are more important than the weight. I think some groups feel we only collected 20 kilos of rubbish, but it was those big numbers that they collected that are not then available to break down in the environment. So obviously we're running this as part of getting people thinking a little bit more about Plastic Free July and thinking about what they could actually start to refuse as far as those single-use plastics. So we're encouraging our community as a whole to make a difference. And I would like to thank you all as I hand over to Bridget for question time that we will do our best to answer. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Margot. I'm just going to shift over to the questions and answers. They're loading. So I've got a few here. We've got one from Karen. A question for Katika. Should I not store food in plastic containers?
A simple answer is really avoid it. But if you have to do it, it's not like my house is devoid of any plastic. Anything dry which you're not going to heat or freeze, it's fine, because the chemical leaching and all those changes, physiological, they don't occur at that much rate at room temperature. But microwavable containers, I would say a complete no to that, because there's already a lot of research that if you are storing food, heating food in plastic, the migration of those chemicals into your food is very high.
Thank you so much. Can I add a second question that's from me personally? Would you recommend against non-stick sort of
Yes.
pans and pots?
Yes, it's not just plastic, but non-stick pans have a lot of PFAS in it. So Teflon coating basically is very carcinogenic. And I'm not saying that it is, what happens, even if you use it for 3 months, you see some cracks or something, somebody used a spoon. Once the crack develops, that's the entry point for it to just get into your food. So I would suggest transition slowly to ceramics, stainless steel. Like, there are so many other options that you can use, which will still give you that non-stick ability, but they are much safer and durable as well.
Thank you so much. We've got a question from Lindy. Do we know if plastics or their attached chemicals might be causing allergens to occur so much more often in the community?
There is, I'm not sure if it's published or not, but currently we are doing a study in inhalers. So all the people who use inhalers, they are plastic as well. So there has been some research going on in that area, whether those chemicals could induce inflammation or some sort of inhalation response, I guess. But as I said, these things are so new, the research is so new that I'm not ready to say yet what exactly happens. It still needs to be determined.
Thank you. I think our other question is probably also for you.
That's okay. Maybe I scared so many people.
No, I think people are starting to realize that, I think it's great that you're raising awareness and your research is groundbreaking. So obviously people are going to have questions about it. Does making clothes from nylon or PET, recycled clear plastic bottles, make a difference? Or is it other factors rather than the type of plastic?
It's a very, it's not a famous opinion, but our entire group, or you should say the research all around the world, recycled plastics are really not good for the environment. When you recycle plastic, they have to add more and more chemicals to make it into another product, to mold it into another product. So yes, morally you feel better that you are making use of the material that would have gone to some facility or to landfill, but the ideal situation will be reducing the use of plastics rather than saying, oh yeah, I'm just going to recycle, so I'm going to use a lot of plastics and then try to recycle it, mold it into something else. Thava would like to add something, I'm pretty sure, on this as well.
Yeah, I also responded. Thank you for the question. All the cloths will shed fibers. That's the structure of the cloths. Okay, so cotton or any other natural fibers also will shed fibers, and using polyester, nylon, and plastic. So the problem is it's not degradable. and those tiny fibers can penetrate organs. So that is the issue. And making cloths with recycled polyester is promoted in terms of waste management perspective. So you collect all the bottles, used bottles, PET bottles, and then convert it, melt it, and bring it into a PET fiber, and then use it for again woven and non-woven setup. But the issue here, the plastic is not going away. It is still circulating in our life. As Kritika explained, every time you recycle plastics, the nature of plastic getting changed. So I used to be rude about answering this, because if we are convinced plastic waste is bad, and what makes us to think recycled plastic is going to be good? That's a waste management perspective. Yes, it's absolutely, we have to get rid of this some way, in somewhere. An available option is straightforward, either mechanical recycling or physical recycling. You can use it in various forms, but there are sensible ways to recycle, but clothing is not one of them. Already our laundry is, we can't buy a plastic-free cloths now. So we have a project with the Cotton Research Council. It's a large project. Cotton industry is struggling to meet sustainability goal, because cotton, a natural fiber, contaminated with polyester or nylon when it's converted into fabrics. And then at the end of the life, Australia is world #1 textile waste generator. #1. We consume a lot of textile and dispose in landfill. And these blended textiles, when I say blended, it's mixed with plastics and cotton, is a big problem compared to the 100% cotton or a natural fiber or cloths, because that can be easily composted. So the plastic blended textiles and plastics textiles is a problem. But if you use it in a different scenario, that's okay. For example, they use screens and all, but again, when you wash it, it's guaranteed to release a lot of fibers.
Thank you so much. Oh, Mark. All right. Thank you so much. We might leave it there. Thank you to everyone who has come along tonight. Special thanks to our 4 speakers for your time and expertise.